Despite an early roadblock against Northern Illinois, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish had an incredible 2024 season in which they got all the way to the national championship. Part of this was because of their star quarterback Riley Leonard, who had transferred in from Duke and seemingly was exactly what the Irish needed. Looking ahead to the 2025 season, Notre Dame still returns one of the best players in college football in running back Jeremiah Love, but they have to find a new quarterback. They had a quarterback battle that went on most of the summer, and finally they named their starter. It's a guy by the name of CJ Carr, and in today's video, we're going to talk about who he is. At one point, CJ was one of the highest ranked quarterbacks to commit to Notre Dame ever. He has college football greatness in his lineage, and he might be exactly what the Irish need in order to get back and make a deep run in this year's college football playoff. In today's video, I'm going to introduce you to Notre Dame's new star quarterback, CJ Carr. We're going to go through how he got to this point and how good he could be for the Irish this year. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you can support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about CJ Carr. So in order to understand how we got to this point, we first need to go back in time. You guys probably figured that CJ Carr is related to the Carrs at Michigan, and that is in fact very much true. His father, Jason, was a quarterback for the Wolverines, and his grandfather, Lloyd Carr, was a coach for them. He led the Wolverines to a perfect season and the 1997 national championship, and his other grandfather, Tom Curtis, was also a Hall of Famer and Super Bowl champion. Football runs in CJ Carr's blood, and there was going to be a lot of pressure on him to perform. He was going to be the next big thing out of the family, and early on, he was an upbeat person with a strong arm, but unfortunately, he would have to deal with tragedy in 2015 when his youngest brother Chad died from a rare form of brain cancer. Part of CJ's life mission is the Chad Tough Foundation, which provides funding for 65 researchers to assist families with this sort of disease, with this sort of rare type of cancer. Honestly, that was really sad. But moving on from that, growing up in the state of Michigan, CJ Carr had been in the spotlight ever since he started his first game as a freshman for Saline High School. This came all the way back in 2020, and he eventually took over as the starting quarterback his sophomore season. He passed for about 2,700 yards and 28 touchdowns and helped Saline High School go 9-1. From there, he would become a blue-chip recruit at the time and blew up nationally. Power 5 schools like Michigan, Michigan State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Penn State, and Wisconsin were some of the early teams to offer him. Where would he end up going? Well, you probably assumed he'd be Michigan, right? Well, that ended up being wrong. CJ Carr chose to go to Notre Dame over 19 other offers, most notably Michigan. The guy was not too far from campus, and he had plenty of reasons to go there, but he chose to go to Notre Dame. At the time, he was one of two 5-star recruits who were already committed, as the other was Dylan Raiola, who was committed to Ohio State back then. Michigan was long considered the favorite for Carr, given all his family ties, but Notre Dame really made a move the last couple of months, and he also visited for their Irish invasion game, and there was buzz about him landing at Notre Dame after all. CJ Carr said, quote, "When I knew that I found the right spot for me, I knew I wanted to get that out of the way and commit, and Notre Dame is the spot." The last time Notre Dame had signed a 5-star quarterback was almost a decade ago when Gunnar Kiel would flip from LSU to Notre Dame, and the last time Notre Dame signed a quarterback as highly rated as Carr was in 2007 when they grabbed Jimmy Clausen. Yeah, CJ Carr was a huge deal in the summer of 2023 when he committed, and during his junior season, the buzz would continue to grow. He passed for 2,685 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions to go along with 200 yards and 7 scores on the ground. There was actually a lot of discussion about CJ reclassifying at one point and that he'd be able to enroll at Notre Dame early for the fall, but with transfer Sam Hartman coming in, it seemed to make the most sense for him to just stick around at Saline for one more year. As he approached signing with Notre Dame, there was a lot of family banter, as you can probably imagine. One example was CJ was standing in the kitchen, and he was looking for an after-school snack one day. His grandfather sent a jab over to him, saying, quote, "You're wearing that sweatshirt, ? And with a smirk, he said, yeah. Lloyd said he'll be cheering for CJ in a Notre Dame uniform despite his past at Michigan, but CJ wanted to spread his wings and go a little bit further from home. I totally buy the fact that he wanted to leave home, but South Bend, Indiana is literally as close as you can get to the state of Michigan while also leaving at the same time. The decision was very tough for him, but he thought he was moving in the right direction. During his senior season at Saline, CJ threw for 2,800 yards and 24 touchdowns, with 9 more rushing scores. His recruiting ranking would take a bit of a dip, but it wasn't too bad. He was also working with one of the best quarterback trainers in the country who had just been helping out Caleb Williams, so he was really on pace to becoming a big name. During his high school career at Saline, Carr had more than 8,000 yards and 80 touchdown passes to go along with all-state honors. But he knew that it didn't mean anything once he stepped foot at Notre Dame. CJ said, quote, "Everybody's the guy in high school, and everybody's the best player in their town. That's what's going to make a great team, as people need to come in and compete no matter what." CJ Carr was a 4-star recruit, the number 6 quarterback, and the 45th best player in the class of 2024, so Irish fans were super excited to get him on campus, and his freshman year would pretty much go exactly according to plan. Going into his Notre Dame career, he was going to be hyped up, and scouts also thought he was going to be really good. Ryan Roberts, a recruiting director, said, quote, "Carr is about as advanced of a quarterback that Notre Dame has signed in a long time. He brings a requisite level of size, arm talent, and improv skills. Carr's mind and accuracy are what really set him apart." Quarterback Riley Leonard also said that Carr was much further along than he personally was as a freshman, so all indicators were good. For now, though, Carr would be 4th on the depth chart, as Riley Leonard, Steve Angeli, and Kenny Minchey had earned the opportunity to be higher up. CJ was just going to hold a clipboard and try to get better, and that was totally fine with him. He'd end up appearing in one total game in 2024, as he'd come in mop-up duty in their 66-7 rout against the Purdue Boilermakers. He had never thrown a college pass or logged a carry, but he did at least step foot on the field. There were a lot of questions about Notre Dame's quarterback room in 2024, as they had lost Riley Leonard, who had just led them to the national championship game, and he went off to the Indianapolis Colts. He's going to hope to try to make things happen in Indianapolis, but up north in South Bend, there was a quarterback battle. The battle was led by frontrunner Steve Angeli, who was a 4-star recruit who had waited his time and was probably the most experienced option. The next guy was Kenny Minchey, who was a late riser in his high school recruiting class and flipped from Pittsburgh to Notre Dame, and he was more of a dual-threat exciting player, but was less polished. The third option was true freshman quarterback Blake Hebert, who at one point was a 5-star but fell nearly to a 3-star after flipping from the Clemson Tigers to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He was not going to play, and of course the last option was CJ. He was probably the most intriguing quarterback in the room, as while he had no experience, it just seemed like he was probably going to be the best option for him. We got confirmation this spring that that was definitely the case, as Steve Angeli would put his name into the spring transfer portal window and would end up at Syracuse, and he actually beat out Ricky Collins for the starting job. Good for him. Kenny Minchey was now in a neck-and-neck battle with CJ, and as things would continue throughout the summer, some said that Kenny was in the lead, while others said that CJ had it in the bag. Going back to that spring game, Carr ended up outshining Minchey, going 14 of 19 with 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, whereas Minchey went 6 of 14 for 100 yards and no touchdowns. Eventually, the battle went on, but CJ Carr was recently named the starter a couple weeks ago, and he will take over for Riley Leonard and be the guy for head coach Marcus Freeman. CJ will have a very interesting test, as in his first career game, he's going to start out on the road against the Miami Hurricanes, who are currently a top 10 team. They have one of the most experienced players in all of college football, as Carson Beck returns to the college football world after being a 2-year starter for the Georgia Bulldogs. This will be a rematch of the Catholics versus Convicts game, and it's also put in the primetime slot on Sunday night. CJ Carr is definitely ready for the moment, as he said he learned a lot from Riley Leonard and will try to emulate this season. Except, these two guys are completely different from each other. CJ is a true pocket passer who's not likely to run the ball, who's not likely to scramble and run the ball, whereas Riley Leonard did a lot of that. Seemingly, Riley was more of a runner than a passer at times, and these two couldn't be different physically, but mentally, they might be pretty dang close to each other. Luckily, he'll have some good weapons to help bail him out if he struggles, as they bring back the best running back in college football in Jeremiah Love, and then guys like Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse will be his top 2 weapons in terms of their wide receiver spot. I'm not quite sure what to think of Notre Dame this year, as we pretty much just assume that they'll be back to the college football playoff, but a lot of that is banking on their new quarterback in CJ Carr. If there's one thing we know though, is that he is ready for the moment, he's ready to step up, and he has a good bloodline. He's got people in his family tree that have won at the highest level of college football, so there's no reason to think that CJ won't be the same. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see how he does on Sunday. But what do you guys think? If you're a Notre Dame fan, what do you think of CJ Carr? How good do you think he'll be this season? And which quarterback from your team should I spotlight next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.